Theater of Blood has a massive problem. And that problem may not be obvious to a lot of people, but if you really think about it, it's like nothing we've ever seen before, which is most of the drops at Theater of Blood are not worth going for. See, RuneScape is a constantly evolving game, right? You know, we always need to bring in new items and new bosses and new pieces of content to make the game feel fresh, right? But in doing so, we kind of have to leave some things behind. You know, there's always going to be newer drops. There's always going to be a new best in slot. There's always going to be the brand new thing that's going to increase someone's damage or whatever, right? Maybe it's a side grade, it doesn't matter. But Tob is in this weird spot where the only two drops that are actually worth going for at Theater of Blood is the Avernic and the Scythe. And things like the Sang, the Rapier, and Justy are just not worth the purples that they're printed on. This is a massive problem for an extremely obvious reason. Raids typically equal best in slot items, and although Tob does have some best in slot items, a lot of its items have been pushed to the wayside from newer content. Think the Sang used to be only second to the Shadow, but now you can get the Eye of Ayak from the new Doom boss, or the Rapier, which has always kind of been in this awkward spot, but it's always sort of had a place. But with new items such as the Bell's Folly and everything else basically outclassing it. I mean, like, we have the Fang. If we ever get a better stab weapon than the Fang, that's insane. But it's in this really awkward spot because when people associate raids, they associate getting best in slot items. And I mean, that's consistent across the other raids. You know, all the items at Chambers of Xeric have maintained their value. They all sit at that sort of best in slot or side grade thing. You get your best in slot prayers. You know, you get your best in slot mage gear. You get the best in slot range weapon in the game. You know, you've got the buckler, which is an insane side grade, which is good for, you know, things like chinning or whenever you're using one-handed weapon. You know, you've got the Dragon Hunter crossbow, which has its niches. You know, you got the Dragon Claws, which are top tier DPS PKing weapons. And then obviously you've got Tombs of Amascut, which has, you know, the best in slot mage weapon and the best in slot range armor and the best in slot stab weapon. You know, it doesn't take a genius to go, hang about. If both other raids, being Chambers of Xeric and Tombs of Amascut, have retained their value and will do for the foreseeable future, then what do we do about Tob? I think with how the game's progressing and how we're adding all this new thing, we should be open to the idea of reworks. One of the newest problem items that have come into the game that really kind of got me thinking about this, because I've been recently thinking about getting a new mage weapon on my Iron Man, and I thought to myself, oh, I'd really like a Sang. And then I thought to myself, the Sang is expensive to use, hard to get, and completely outclassed by a much easier weapon to obtain. And it's easier to maintain as well. I mean, would you rather buy a shitload of blood runes or chop a tree? The choice is yours. And although Tob is still worth farming, being the Scythe is an insanely versatile and great weapon, and the Avernic being almost like an essential upgrade on your account, that is always a feel-good moment. It just feels unrewarding. As in, 7 drops? 2 out of 7 drops are actually going to be the ones that you want, and those other 5 times you're going to be thinking to yourself, fuck me, dude, this sucks. Which really puts us in this awkward spot, which is, what the hell do we do about it? Now, there's been a lot of ideas thrown around, such as, well, we can make Justy break down and then combine into another item, which sounds like a good idea on paper, but then Justicar loses its identity, which wouldn't really be a good idea if it's coming from a raid. You don't really want to have your raid items be broken down to create something else. That really leaves us with 2 items. What do we do with the Rapier? And what do we do with the Sang? There's a couple ideas that we can throw around. I know that we need to do something. I think the most obvious thing we could do to make the Sang competitive again is make it a little bit cheaper to run. At the moment, what is it, like 4 mil to fill it up from blood runes that you get from the store? And then obviously you can buy it at, you know, blood runes from the GE and stuff like that. But it's still a really expensive item to maintain. And then the Rapier really needs probably the most tender love and care. And admittedly, I don't really know the answer, but I know it's not right. There's been some ideas throwing around where we could potentially, you know, give it a passive as an example. Let's put a passive on it. Maybe make it work with the Blood Fury in some way. Maybe make it work with the Avernic in some way. You know, some kind of combination of items that would unlock its passive. What that passive would be, who knows? Maybe you could do it like a double hit. You know, maybe it could proc Blood Fury more often, or maybe it could negate a charge. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that Tob lacks something, which is item identity. Obviously, again, we have the Scythe, which is massive. But outside of that, it doesn't really compete with the other raids in any capacity when it comes to item identity. My overarching point of this video is to kind of maybe just spark a conversation, get something going, because Tob will kind of continue to go into this place of obscurity. Tob is already inaccessible by a lot of players that don't really want to socialize, or they find it hard to find groups because of their inexperience or whatever else. Tob definitely has an accessibility issue, which is a problem all on its own. But with this identity, this lack of people that are doing it, and the fact that it really is probably the best piece of content in the game. I'll make a video on that actually. That's a really good idea. Why Tob is fantastic. I think that will be a banger. Definitely hasn't been done before. Ultimately, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that we have a problem. I think people that do Tob know that we have a problem. Even people that, you know, just run Tob for GP, right? Exclude Iron Man completely. They know that there's no real point behind a lot of those items. You know, how many times do you hear, please, I hope it's not Justy. Oh, it's just a rapier. Why is Avernic one of the more expensive items when it's the most common? The only other example of that would be like the Dexterous Prayer Scroll, but that's because Rigor is insane. But that is beside the point. So I guess, yeah, I just wanted to bring this to people's attention because I don't actually hear a lot of people talk about it. What would you do? What do you think we need to do about Tob? Because I don't have the answer, but I don't want to see one of my favorite pieces of content in the game become this place where it's just like it's Scythe or nothing. I don't think that's fair, and I think we need to do something. We need to do something for Tob. Hey everyone, Editor Adzy here. Hope you're all doing well. I would love to see what you guys think down in the comments. Let me know if you think Tob needs to change. If you think I'm wrong, I would love to hear your opinions and thoughts. And if you have any ideas, please share them. You know, maybe put it on Reddit, maybe do whatever, because I think that we have a real problem here. And if we don't do something about it soon, I think we're going to have, you know, a big problem with Tob, you know, go 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Because outside of the Scythe, why the hell would you do it? But yeah, would love to hear what you think. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for listening to me yap. I hope you all have a wonderful day.